We are working on Unit 4, which looks at evolution. And as we talked about in class, the word evolution literally means change over time. We see that types of cars have changed or evolved, fashion has changed or evolved. But when we talk about it in the idea of life, we're really looking at something that's more called change over generations. Because you as a living organism, you're alive for a period of time, but you don't really evolve. And so we're going to be studying the evolution from the very first cells up until current. And so the formation of the Earth is estimated to be about 4.6 billion years old. The very first cells are about 3.6 billion years ago. And so we're going to be looking at where did these very first cells come from. And so you should be, I think, on page 75 in your notes, but we're definitely on section 4.1. And we're starting to talk about the origin of life. How did life begin? And there are a lot of different theories about how life began. For biology, we look at a theory called abiogenesis. It's the idea that life came from non-living material. It's also called spontaneous generation. I do want you to circle a few things in here. We know that bio means life. Bio means life. A means not, and genesis means beginning. So abiogenesis literally means not life beginning. That Earth had a period of time where there were not living things, but that life could have come from non-living things. And we're going to look at how could a life have come from something that's non-living. So in order to understand that, we have to go back to early Earth. We have to use fossils to look back at what was Earth like 4.6 billion years ago. Is about how far back we're going to go. 4.6 billion years ago, Earth consisted of, in this picture, this little diagram is kind of bright, there was a lot of energy. So let's add that in, energy. There was a lot of energy, volcanic eruptions, thunderstorms. There were gases like carbon monoxide, that's CO, nitrogen like N2, carbon dioxide like CO2, and there was water. There was lots of water on Earth. But there was no oxygen gas. And we can see this through the fossils that we have. And so this gives us a picture of what early Earth was like. And so a man named Oparin, you don't necessarily need to know his name, but you do need to know that there's a theory that inorganic materials, things like CO2, H2O, could become organic materials. Remember, organic are things that have CH and O. Things like carbohydrates, amino acids, nucleotides, lipids. Inorganic compounds, if there was the right amount of energy, that energy could break the bonds of the CO2 and H2O, and we could get a new molecule that is organic. And so Oparin developed this theory based on the early conditions of Earth, based on the fossil evidence of what we know Earth was like. His theory is that we could have formed these organic molecules, let's add in, like carbs and lipids. Also proteins and nucleic acids. And we know that carbs and lipids and proteins and nucleic acids, that's what cells are made of. And so this theory is sometimes called the primordial soup theory, but it's the idea of where the very first molecules might have come from. Then we have two other scientists that took Oparin's theory and actually put it to test. They created an experiment that tested early Earth conditions, and they actually observed the formation of organic molecules, specifically proteins. So what they did, here's a picture of their experiment. They took all the gases that were there on early Earth, methane, carbon dioxide, so an amino acid is not a cell, but it is part of what we know cells to be. So this idea is that life could have started from non-living things, and that's called abiogenesis. Now the other theory is biogenesis. All cells come from other pre-existing cells, and so we call this life now continues. That we had those very first cells that formed, and that each of those cells divided to create offspring. So the idea is that life began from abiogenesis and continues through biogenesis. They're not opposites of each other. They work together to explain how life could have started and how life now continues. So we do want to be able to look at what is the evidence of early Earth. About 4.6 billion years ago, it's believed that the very first cells formed. However, that's not still happening today. If you mix carbon dioxide gas and water and nitrogen, you're not going to poof, all of a sudden have a living thing. And for a long time, people didn't really understand where living things came from. For example, if people saw rotting meat and flies and maggots, they thought that the maggots came from the rotting meat. Well, that's not true, because as of right now on Earth, biogenesis is the only way that living things exist. All life now comes from other living things. And so Redi and Pasteur, Redi developed this experiment with rotting meat, and what it turned out is that the flies needed to land on it to lay their eggs for the maggots to grow. And so it's really interesting to look at experiments to see how scientists collected data. Here we have Pasteur. Have you ever heard of pasteurize? Louis Pasteur developed a technique to kill microorganisms because microorganisms can grow and divide as well. He did a really cool experiment where he took broth, kind of like chicken broth, and boiled it and sterilized it. And he designed this jar with this S-shaped flask so that air could get in, but gravity would pull down anything that had any more weight. So this is still sitting in a museum in France to show that it will remain sterile as long as no living thing enters it. That even if you have nutrients for life, right now life will not just come to be. And so Redi and Pasteur helped us understand that currently the only way for life to exist is through biogenesis. And so the second part of our notes is about, well, how did we get the diversity of life? And this is a really important idea. Please put a big star or bubble around this. We have a huge diversity of different living things. And they all came through mutations. Every mutation creates new variation. And so if we started out with one type of cell, then over time, as mutations accumulate, we might have different types of cells. So we have something called the heterotroph hypothesis. The very first cells lacked complexity. What does that mean? That means they were simple. That means they were prokaryotic. No nucleus, no complex organelles. They could not make their own food, which means that they were heterotrophic. So the very first cells, about 3.5 billion years ago, were prokaryotic and aerobic. Remember, there's no oxygen. And were heterotrophic, which means they consumed food. So those are the very first cells that we believed existed. Next, we believe that there were mutations, and that there were, second, we want to add in here, types of cells that were prokaryotic, still anaerobic, but now could make their own food. They were photosynthetic. And those photosynthetic cells produced oxygen as waste. So the first cells are what we call PNH, prokaryotic, anaerobic, heterotrophic. These next cells are prokaryotic, anaerobic, but photosynthetic. And then the third type of cell that we saw are the evolution of aerobic cells, cells that could consume oxygen to produce And so what we want to understand is that as cells have evolved, we get a variety of cells. And the very last part is understanding where eukaryotic cells came from. It's this idea that smaller cells actually started to live together in something called the endosymbiont theory. And so this will be the end of the notes for today, just beginning to get an idea of what were the first cells like, how did cells change over time, and how do we now have a diversity of cells. So make sure that you get those notes and do your summary back.